Hello and welcome to Unit 2 of Week 5 of the online result based monitoring and evaluation course delivered by Cloneshouse, Nigeria. Um, my name still remains Oludotumbabayemi. I'm an evaluator with about 12 years' experience developing and creating monitoring and evaluation systems for government organizations, non-government organizations, and also private entities that are involved in development cooperation. Um, I'm sure, it's been an exciting 5 weeks. This is the fifth week since we started this, and since you've been in this class, and I hope this has been useful. In week 5, which is this week, Unit 1, we have been able to discuss how you are supposed to develop or create a monitoring and evaluation plan, which is actually what we have. So it's like you putting together all what we have been doing from week 1 to week 4 in either a narrative document or a tabular format. But I think for the task that we assigned ourselves to carry out for the unit 1, we said you should probably use the tabular format, but also that I would like to encourage us to put our hands, lay our hands on using the narrative one, because it's very important when you get to a level, especially maybe as a national M&E officer or a sectoral national M&E advisor. That is what you'll be using to create a monitoring and evaluation plan. And just to say that that document is the life wire of any evaluation department, an evaluation officer. If you want to carry out monitoring and evaluation, that's what you need to get started as a plan. So this is Unit 2, and we will be discussing what we have been doing from week 1 till week 5 in terms of the task that has been assigned that you've worked on. So this is actually trying to put all this bunch of information into clear perspective on, and also to make you realize why you have been doing those tasks. So it's like putting them together and now connecting all the tasks just to make you understand that there's actually a logical workflow in all this. And probably you might have seen that in the monitoring and evaluation plan that, oh, it's actually all these pieces that I'm supposed to put in inside my monitoring and evaluation plan. So we call it from start to finish, actually. Do not forget to please put in your comments, questions in the classroom. Yes, once you're in the classroom, you can make comments on some of this video materials, because this is self-paced online class. So, you could, if you have suggestions, comment, please do use that comment box and put in your comments. In this unit, which might necessarily be a small unit. We would look at, yes, trying to go back to what we've been doing: results versus traditional M&E, objective setting, theory of change, indicators, data collection, methodologies, data analysis, conducting and managing evaluation, then developing monitoring and evaluation plan. So, I'm going to quickly connect all this together and see how this flows for us. So this will not necessarily be a long session, but just to summarize and make us understand some of the tasks that has been assigned to us. So in week 1, actually, what we did was to try as much as possible to differentiate between result-based monitoring and evaluation and traditional based monitoring and evaluation. If you look at some literatures also, you might actually see participatory monitoring and evaluation, which that's also a methodology, especially if you're using the learning approach to things. You might necessarily want to use a participatory in which from the start of the program till the end of the program you are with the program implementers. Like we said, during evaluation designs, those are quite costly, but we've seen that in this space that partners have started using that type. But yeah, difference between result. Yeah, so when we say traditional M&E, it is when um, institutions, organizations are actually just monitoring for compliance. That's what it just means. So, for example, yes, we've been able to provide um, desk in classrooms. We've been able to provide teaching aids. Can we know the number of desks? Can we know if the desks are functional? Can we know if teachers are actually visiting the classroom? So the results that you achieve in a traditional M&E would stay at the output level. I'm sure you now understand what we mean by output, which is, yes, the immediate result from your activities in terms of reach as well. So that is what traditional M&E is. And also, we can give another example of a project that hopes to provide a road connection for farmers from the rural community to the urban community, to the urban center. You might think the way that is going to go is just for the monitoring and evaluation officers to make sure that yes, the road were constructed and it was constructed according to plan, according to the money that was budgeted for it, and yes, to simply know the number of people that are applying the road, and that might just be it for traditional. But for results-based monitoring and evaluation, in the case of the classrooms, provision of classrooms, provision of teaching aids, what we will be looking at is actually measuring the results up to the impact level, which might mean the literacy, uh, the literacy rate of the pupils that are now using the classroom. So we might be looking at the test scores of these children. We might be looking at how much they can now read English or an improvement in their numerical skills. So results at this stage is measured till the impact level where we want to see those results actually happening. And one thing is that here result based monitoring and evaluation actually takes time. You could be talking about 5 years, 7 years before you see those changes. While in traditional monitoring and evaluation, where what you're doing is actually compliance, might just be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you've done what you're supposed to be doing. So I mean, these are the different dimensions in result based monitoring and evaluation and traditional based monitoring and evaluation. Also, before we jump over, is that yes, we try differentiating between monitoring and evaluation, and some of the perspective is that yes, I mean, these are actually words that they are interconnected. When you say evaluation, you think about monitoring, right? So what we some of the things we said about the difference is that yes, monitoring uh, might or always is done internally, while evaluation is done by maybe an external evaluator who comes and does the evaluation as well. Also, that we said monitoring is a continuous thing, and think about your routine monitoring data. That is data you collect from activities every day, every week, every month. That's related to monitoring, right? While in evaluation, it is actually periodic. Remember that we have talked about so at this point we shouldn't think we should not think evaluation as something that is done after the program, right? Because you could do a process evaluation, which you could do a formative evaluation, which is done just before the program starts. You could do an evaluation which is done um, during when implementation of that program is being done, so that we call it process activity, process evaluation. So which means that actually evaluation is done periodically. So there's a particular time you're supposed to do it, right? Perhaps after 1 year, you're supposed to do it. After 2 years, you're supposed to do it. After 3 years, you're supposed to do it. But in case of traditional monitoring and evaluation, you want to be doing it like almost every day. For example, in a program that hopes to improve the nutrition of small children in basic education, for example, and we can use the school homeschool grown feeding program as an example. So the school feeding program, which cuts across the world actually, which provides lunch pack to children as one of its uh, intervention. So when you start looking at the numbers of lunch pack that is given to this pupil every day, that is what we call monitoring. That is referred to as monitoring. When after a year, you now want to come and actually evaluate perhaps the extent at which that lunch pack has increased enrollment, for example, in the school, then you're talking about evaluation, right? So, I mean, you could think about it in that format and have several examples. So so monitoring and evaluation, they're different in that perspective. And I think majorly, I think that methodologically, that's where the key difference is in monitoring and evaluation. Um, the methods that you use in evaluation is so rigorous, much more than what you do in monitoring. I mean, monitoring, you are able to collect the data almost quantitatively, looking at the numbers, while in evaluation you want to think about several dimensions of it, um, because you're looking at the results level, right? So you want to think about interviews, you want to think about administering questionnaires, so I mean, you would necessarily not use one method, right? But in monitoring, collecting monitoring data, the data you are collecting is actually based on the activities that are done. While in evaluation, yes, you need to create several ways, even outside the activities that are done. So then we move to you trying to think about objectives of um, the case studies that was provided. So there are actually 4 case studies. So you think about the objective of each of the case study, and it is from setting these objectives. Yes, we didn't actually um, focus a whole lot on creating objectives, because that is actually not part of this course, because so we have another course in project management which actually discusses objective setting in full. You coming into this session, we believe you should have been able to do that, or think about that, like, oh, the objective for any program is actually important. But some of this we've actually put inside the case study, so you would actually find it in the case study, like the objective of each of the projects. So it could be, yes, improving school structures. It could be reducing maternal mortality in a community. It could be increasing income of small and medium enterprises that are working on oil palm production, and it could be, yes, improving or improving computer literacy amongst girl children. So, I mean, these are several objectives that you think about. Then we move to you now developing a theory of change, which is actually what you feel or think success looks like for your own projects. Yeah, we say is a theory. So it is like you starting that program. You are now saying that, oh, for me to actually reduce maternal mortality in this state, first, I need to identify the problems. So what are the problems? What are the needs? So in terms of needs of that state or of that community, it is based on these needs. When I'm able to identify the needs of these people, then I can think about who are the target audience, who would I focus on, in my program. And don't forget now, we're talking about people that are putting together a program. There's a reason why we put in this theory of change. So, as a monitoring and evaluation officer in a program that is part of a program, it is important that during the design of the program or project, you are part of it. Most times you might not be part of it, and that is what we see in real life. In real program conditions, you might be recruited maybe after implementation has started, or about when the implementation has started. You might not be there during the program design, especially if you're working with an NGO. Um, State governments or federal governments can have a national M&E officer, but not at all times anyways. Also, if you're working for a foundation, you might also be recruited after the strategy has been designed for 5 years or so. So I mean, you should think about maybe reviewing the theory of change, and that's why, because the theory of change seems like the foundation for every other thing you will be doing, like deciding on indicators and all. So it's important you look at the theory of change. Either you want to construct one, if there were none, or you want to review the one that was done when you weren't there. So think about the target audience, then also think about, you now move on to thinking about how to reach the audience in terms of, yes, activities that can be done, inputs and all at that stage. Then you now move into the dimension of, I mean, after the input and the activities has been designed, what exactly you're supposed to do to now create, yes, reaching more of those target audience. So which will now be in terms of your output. So your target audience having access to your products that you have designed, them coming for your outreaches, the target audience being part of your workshops, your target audience being part of your mobilizations, rallies, and your target audience having access to the loans you have provided for that community. Then your theory of change now moves um, to the level of change, right? Which means that yes, they've taken part in your programs. Now you want to think about the behavioral change, the knowledge change that might have happened, and that's what you now measure at the outcome stage. And we actually said that you see, at times you might not necessarily just get into the outcome like that. You might think about an intermediary. So there's an intermediate outcome, then there's a final outcome. So that could actually happen in a program, or you could put it as part of a theory of change as well. So this is when, yes, your beneficiaries, which are your target actually for the program, are now changing in terms of behavior, in terms of knowledge, in terms of skills, in terms of actions that they are taking as part of that program, which in essence then leads to, yes, a longer term change in the community. So this is what are the components of what you have in the theory of change, and it is very important um, to take this into cognizance, and it's part of what you actually build in the work that you have done. Then afterwards, what we did in that week one was to create indicators for, based on the results that you hope to achieve from here. So you are able to design different indicators. And we said there are two types of indicators. You have the numerical indicators, you have the non-numerical indicators. Yes, you think about numerical indicators. So they let you understand what is happening in the program, right? While the non-numerical indicators allows you to know how things have changed, actually, in how and why things have actually changed in a program. During the course of the class, I mentioned vividly that non-numerical indicators are actually used at the output, at the um, at the at the outcome, and at the impact stage. But on the other hand, numerical indicators, yes, I mean, they cut across all the levels of change as you move from the input, the activities, to the output, to the outcome, and to the impact of the project. You have numerical indicators, and your numerical indicators can come in form of numbers. It can come in form of rates, it can come in form of percentages, it can come in form of proportions, it can come in form of ratios. So, and we gave a bunch of list of indicators, and also that you can go to indicate.net and get um, indicators that has already been used and defined for programs. And also it's important for us to know that currently, I mean, there's the Sustainable Development Goals, which has a bunch of indicators currently that has been designed already. So I mean, you can think about that and also think of using some of that as well. But largely, what we do in indicators, depending on the program, is to develop these indicators with the stakeholders, the beneficiaries, so they can also take ownership of the success of the program, because indicators are actually what we mean by success, right? Uh, uh, what we would use to measure success, either way, or what will tell us when we are successful. So, uh, for instance, now if you're saying percent of married men who report having had or having sexual relations with men, or percent of clients who rate staff attitude as excellent, for instance, percent of clients who rate staff attitude as excellent. So I mean, this is a pointer to the fact that, so this is what we'll be looking out for. So it's either we're going to see an increase in our program, or we're going to see a decrease. So this is what we'll be watching out for. So it's not just that we're going to run our program and we won't have something to look at to measure what we refer to as success. So you could have non-numerical indicators, also in terms of quotes, testimony, cases, typographies, perceptions. So, I mean, think about that. And we also said that, yes, most times we miss out on qualitative, non-numerical indicators. We miss out on it. And it might be important to be able to match these two together, at least maybe use one or two indicators might be very important for our program. Also, that there was something we mentioned about indicators, which I think we need to. So you can have 5 objectives actually, and have just 3 indicators. So it's important that you keep your indicators simple as much as possible, so that you're not actually looking for a whole lot of, like, you have 10 indicators for 3 objectives. So you need to think about how you're going to be able to tell a story about that, right? Because now you have so many indicators, you now want to attach it to an objective. So it's important that you have a few indicators for each of your objectives or your results as well. Then we discussed, yes, I mean, once you have done this, then you want to think about data collection methods, right? But before that, it's important that you also plan your analysis. We said this, that it is it is important that you plan the instruments you're going to use to collect data that will inform some of these indicators, right? So one thing we normally do is to have this analysis grid, which you can actually use. So this grid allows you to match your indicators with the data collection instrument and the questions you will be asking. So either the evaluation question or the questions that are supposed to be in your instruments. So this is very important for you to have, and this actually precedes or can even precede you deciding about can precede this precedes you precedes going to the field, right? So before you go to the field, before you start data collection, you should be able to put this together. It's very important. And your data collection methodologies, yeah, you can think about it in terms of, yes, quantitative data collection method and qualitative data collection method. Most times, not all the time, when you have a non-numerical indicator, you would want to use a qualitative data collection method. And qualitative data collection method includes interviews, observations, checklists, community interviews, and those interviews can be structured, can be semi-structured, um, so, or can be unstructured. We discussed about this during data collection method, especially qualitative. So there can be those three, which was now broken down into narrative interviews that you can have with key experts. You can have focus group discussions or focus group interviews. You could have group discussions as well. Um, so, I mean, this is a whole bunch of data collection methods um, that you can actually use, and this has been arranged in terms of, yes, informal and less structured to the more structured ones, like you can actually see in here. So this might be useful for you to take a look at in terms of data collection methods that you can use. And I know there was an exercise that you were supposed to design your data collection plan as well. So that's what you have here. Having surveys is definitely a quantitative method also, and I mean, in there are some kind of designs in which you actually have you collect you use qualitative data collection method and also the quantitative data collection method, so in which you have an open-ended question and a closed-ended um, question. So then you move to your you've gone to the field, you've collected um, the data, then you need to enter it. We talked about having recruiting enumerators for a large chunk of program. You might need enumerators. For example, if it was implemented in over 160 states, and in your sample you already have maybe 30 states, maybe you as an evaluator or the consultant might not be able to visit all, then you need to recruit enumerators. If the numbers of respondents are much, yeah, so you need to recruit and we will collect the data, and you would also want to clean and make sure, yes, the data is looking perfect, the rows and columns are what you want and how you wanted it. And we also said something that is important, that before you even go to the field, you should test this entry and cleaning so that you already understand what you will be analyzing. So it's not as it won't be like, oh, it is after you have gone to the field and collected it, you're now trying to test, you're just saying, oh, this column wasn't supposed to be answered, or this column is missing, or I'm not supposed to, this is not a key variable, right? So it's important to have that in mind. Test your instrument. It is I've actually found this very useful. Immediately I design any of these instruments, Either it's a survey, either it's an interview question, or it's an observation checklist. What I do is get 2 or 3 of colleagues that I would either conduct the interview with and collect the data, or that would administer the questionnaires with. And I will get the results, enter the results on my database, then see how my analysis is going to look like. It's very, very important so that during entry or data entry, um, you don't keep going back or changing instrument or feeling like, oh, I haven't captured the right kind of variable that I needed. So, I mean, yes, so you clean the data, and also that in cleaning it is getting it ready for software applications that can do the analysis. Um, for you. So I think most part of analysis is being dedicated to cleaning actually. And also, yes, I mean entry, if you had if you have not used an online tool to collect the data, or an offline tool like Cobalt Toolbox that you can use mobile data collection for, so it becomes something difficult. So you need to enter the data and make sure it's clean. Also, if you had used an online tool, it doesn't necessarily mean you will still not clean. You will still clean, but it won't be as much as when you use the traditional method of collecting data. So recently there has been a wave of mobile data collection, and I quickly wanted to let me see if I can. So VMO um, is a good mobile data collection tool. I know we did not discuss much about this, but I think it might be um, useful for us. This is a new, especially in when you cannot actually go in country or go to the region to collect the data. There is now a mobile, since the mobile penetration in some countries is very high. Now people are using mobile phone, so these are tools that can actually be used. So think about the AMO as a tool you can use to collect data via voice response. So it's called an IVR um, technology, instant voice response. So where you're being called on the phone and you're told to press 1 if you agree, 2 if you disagree, 4 if you somewhat agree. So I mean, instead of administering the questionnaire yourself, so a computer assisted. So now this is a computer assisted um, administration of questionnaire, right? So you can think about this as a very good tool. It has been used by people. It is currently being used now all over Africa. Then cover toolbox. We mentioned this just briefly during, but this is about yes, just sending a link to people's phone and they can actually complete the data on the phone as well. This is not voice. So this is more of like using text, right, to collect data as well. So Bayamo uses SMS as well, and also uses the voice technology of mobile phones. Think about future phones. And also Cobalt Toolbox is like having a survey on a mobile phone. And I mean, one good thing about Cobalt Toolbox is that it's actually free to an extent, so perhaps you can explore it as well. So it's important to just discuss those, because I mean it reduces the function of you doing data entry and cleaning if you're using the traditional way of collecting on paper and you want to now put back on the software system, because that is what actually happens. Well, it's important to state that from my own experience, paper-based data collection is still much more um, than um, than the use of tools or thereabout. Yes, I can say that. But I mean, it's to think about that the future of data collection might be mobile. either it's voice, either it's text message, whichever way you can think about it. So, but what's most important is knowing how to put together your instrument. That's very, very important. The design of the instrument. If it's going on voice, you have to think about that. If it's going um, on mobile text, you have to think about that. Um, so yes, so you enter the data and clean. Then you're supposed to do an analysis, right? What we told you to do in terms of task is to, yes, after creating your questionnaire, is to disseminate it to 20 people. They are supposed to complete it and send back to you, and you're supposed to clean their data just the way it is here. And then you're supposed to do an analysis, right? And you're supposed to give us a result of your analysis of the case study. So, and we discussed actually putting this in in a report, and we discussed what an evaluation report necessarily means, or what's in an evaluation report. So, which in essence, um, in an evaluation report, you will definitely have an executive summary, which is a summary of everything you have in your report, right? You would have um, the introduction to the program or the project, then introduction to why evaluation was carried out, then the evaluation focus, the evaluation targets. You discuss the type of evaluation, the criteria that was used, the evaluation question. Then you now move to the methodology that was used. So you have the evaluation methodology, and then you have the results, right? Which could also be the key findings, and we discussed how you could put together your results succinctly. And then from your results, then you have the conclusion, and from the conclusion, you have the recommendations. We said there are two things that are important in your report: the executive summary and the recommendation. Very, very important in presenting your evaluation report to policymakers, because our decision makers, they do not have time. So you need to think about how to creatively put together your executive summary in a way that summarizes and says what needs to be done, right? And also, having your recommendation in an appealing format, so that change can come, so that the policymaker can actually make the change from your recommendation. So we discuss the results, and I think one of the tasks is for you to also create a recommendation document as a slide. Yes, and from that we move to week 4, where we did conducting and managing evaluation, right? And we discussed, yes, the purpose of an evaluation, evaluation type, which is the types of evaluation, and also evaluation criteria. There was a task that allowed you to complete all these components as part of your case study. The evaluation purpose is very important. And one thing we also didn't discuss in this course is the evaluation approach, which is way off this course, right? But the evaluation purpose suffices as the foundation. Either your evaluation is meant to create new knowledge, either it is meant to check if the program objective or the policy objective or the program objective was met, or it was meant for learning purpose, for us to learn what worked and what didn't work so that we can create a new program, or it is for us to show the impact of the program we have started. The evaluation purpose is actually the foundation, which you need to really consider, and that will now make us think about the criteria, which are the evaluation questions, right? Questions can come in form of relevance, coherence, effectiveness, efficiency, impact, and sustainability. All these are what we refer to as evaluation criteria. And just to mention that, um, yes, coherence was yes. I mean, these are the recent criteria that we use, especially in the profession. So it is out of each one of these we are able to create an evaluation question as well. And we discussed that not all evaluation needs to have all these six as criteria, right? Like you're answering six questions, or making your questions focus on these six criteria. Some might just be four, depending on the resources that is available for such evaluation. Then the criteria then informs also the evaluation type. Is it formative? Is it a process evaluation, which is an evaluation done to actualize the activities? Is it an outcome evaluation, which is an evaluation that is done to understand if the program has achieved its objective? Or is it an economic evaluation, which looks at the amount spent on the program vis-a-vis the beneficiaries, vis-a-vis the impact of the program? So you could start thinking about cost effectiveness of a program, or the cost analysis of a program, or the cost-based analysis of a particular program. So you could think about that as all forms of economic evaluation. Yeah, or it could be an impact evaluation, which is an evaluation done at the end of when the program finishes, right? Maybe 1 year or 2 years after the program, which is what we refer to as ex post evaluation. Also, it's important to think about formative evaluation as an ex ante. Sometimes it's called ex ante evaluation. And also the impact and outcome at times is being called the summative evaluation. So these are different terms that are used in several literatures. But what's important is to understand the basics of this. We have I mean, that was all about, that was some of what we discussed on that, and we moved to, yes, you designing an evaluation as an evaluator. So and we said there are three key things in the designs that we have. It looks at, yes, which units you will collect your data from. So in terms of data collection, and units definitely will mean that, the sample you're going to be collecting your data from, right? Is it at an individual level, or is it at the community level? So we're talking about, for example, are you going to be collecting data from patients in a health facility, or your data collection is going to focus on the PHCs? So that's at the PHC level. If you talk about a school program, then think about, are you going to collect the data from the pupils, or you're going to collect the data from the schools, and you're going to measure difference in schools, which led us to, yes, the point you're going to be collecting the data. Will you be collecting the data at the beginning of the program, or at the end of the program, or every year in the program? Because all this speaks to the kind of design you are actually designing for the evaluation. Then you need to think about under which conditions the data will be collected. So are you going to have a control group, or you're just going to focus on the treatment group? So all this leads to the three type of designs. You have the experimental design, which, yes, I mean, we say is the gold standard. Talking about the randomized control trials, the RCTs, which actually collects data. So it could collect data either from individuals or at the community level, and that data is collected at the beginning of the program and also at the end of the program itself. So think about a 5 years program. Data will be collected at the beginning and also at the end of it. And there is always a control and a treatment group. So control means there's a group that we give the treatments, and also on the other hand, we continue with a group that will not provide you control. So, in a project that is delivering lunch packs to children, what it means is that you in different set of schools, you could create a random sample for that school and give some pupils lunch pack and not give the others lunch pack, and you want to see how they are going to improve in their nutrition, right, at the end of 5 years. So that's what we refer to as the RCTs. And it's an example of an experimental design. You could also have um, the um, the pre-post design, pre-test, the pre-test and the post-test design, which is yes. So I mean, you do not necessarily need a control group for that, but for the treatment group that you have, you would ask them questions at the beginning of your program and also ask them at the end of the program. So just like when you wanted to start this course, you were asked to fill an evaluation form as well. And at the end also, you would also be doing the same thing. So, and we will be answering the same question just to measure the change between those. So, so that's so that's the pre-test, post-test kind of design, and those are the two types of um, experimental design that we discussed. You could also have the quasi-experimental design. Um, the only difference is almost the same thing as the random control trials, but the only difference is that there's no randomization in a quasi-experimental design. So you could decide not to have, so you have a control group, right? And you have a treatment group. The control group or the treatment group might not actually be randomized. So they might not, so you won't take into consideration the characteristics um, within them. So in a quasi-experimental design, you can just take your control from anywhere. That's what it means. You have the third one, which is the non-experimental design, where you have the ex post facto design. And ex post facto design is when all data is being collected at one point in time, which could be just at the end of the program. You collect all the data that is needed. Units might be at the individual level or at the institutional level or community level. You do not need a control group for this. You only need the treatment group to collect data. So that's an ex post facto. You can also have the panel design, or what you call the longitudinal design as well, in which yes, you could collect data from individual or the community level or the institutional level. Um, so the points you collect the data, for example, if it's a program for 5 years, you might decide to be collecting the data every year, right? So think about this course as well. At the end of every week, there's an evaluation. You're supposed to tell us what you think about the course, right? So that's a vivid example of of a panel design, or what you call a longitudinal design. Under what conditions? Yes, you could have a mixed match. Some people would want to have control and a treatment group, and some might just leave it at the control group. But data is being collected at certain points, could be 5 points before the end of the program. But in all this, what's important is that also resources, time, budgets, the political terrain affects the design that you use for an evaluation. So um, you should know that the random control trial is quite expensive. Imagine a 5-year program, and you want to make sure you are checking on the control group and on the treatment group all the time, so that there's no other intervention other than that intervention. That takes a whole lot of time. So I mean, they're affected by those things. Then we looked at the phases of an evaluation, right? We talked about the planning, the implementation stage, and the utilization stage. This is all what happens in an evaluation that you might want to carry out as an evaluator. So right from the planning stage to the implementation stage and to the utilization stage. This we ended with this in week 4 of the class, but I think majorly, yes, the evaluation design and also conducting an evaluation on your case study was the main focus in terms of task. It's important to state that week 4 of this course focused on you being an evaluator that is being hired as a consultant. So, like, you are not a monitoring and evaluation officer. You are not hired as a monitoring and evaluation officer or a monitoring and evaluation advisor for a program that is starting or a program that has just started or a program that is ongoing. So, which is what you might have done for week 1, 2, and 3, right? Um, Also, that, yeah, I mean, what we focused on in week 4 was, yes, you being hired as an external evaluator, right? Or as an evaluator to come and conduct evaluation using these different types, right? So I think it's important to note that even that you will be using some of the techniques we have talked about in week 1. For example, if you are hired 2 years after a program had finished, perhaps you want to look at the indicators and review it, which you will know then it's late, right? Because indicators have been decided upon. There's a theory of change already. You cannot actually do anything with that. So data collection method week 2 will be useful. Also, data analysis will be useful as well. So think about it as, yes, being an external evaluator for week 4, then using the instruments that we've designed or what we've designed in week 2 and week 3. While if you're hired as an M&E officer, then you want to start from week 1, week 2, week 3, in fact, week 4, because you need to also understand what will be done when the time for evaluation comes in. It's very important. So that's the logical workflow. And we landed on week 5 with the M&E plans. Now putting together all we have learned from week 1 down to week 5, and this is the task for week 5, right? We have stated this in week in unit 1 of this week, stating that this is what we're supposed to do. So this is a tabular M&E plan that you can make use of as a template for describing your M&E plan. Then you have the evaluation plan and you have the monitoring plan. So this is the monitoring plan and this is the evaluation plan. We've already talked much about this in unit 1 of this week, so you can go ahead and complete the template for this week, and hopefully, I mean, we can take a look at it. And I mean, these, you can think about, these are all what you've done indicators, the focus of your monitoring, who is responsible, data sources, and when you come to evaluation, you think about evaluation method, focus of evaluation. So think about all that. This is actually the method you would use in collecting data that are related to monitoring, routine monitoring. That's what this monitoring means, the monitoring plan. Remember, we differentiated between monitoring and evaluation. So all what you have here are things that happen during the activities. Yes. And what happens here is after your program has ended, right? That's what you would have in here. So, on that note, for the courses that we have been able to put out for these 5 weeks, these 4 books are quite important. It is it is in this book we have drawn some of our energies. Yes, I call it energy, anyways. But it is in this book we've drawn some of what we have actually taught. They're very important books for a burgeoning evaluator, someone that is starting out, and also a professional as well. These are great books you need to have. They are all in the classroom. We have already provided the ebook format, and I hope that will be um, useful for you as you get along in this profession. And also, one book that is not here, which is actually in the classroom, is the Road to Results, which was, put together by Linda Emas and Ray Rist. It's a very good book as well. It's also um, in the classroom. In week 1, it was part of the essential reading. So you might also get your hand on that as well. These are all um, great books, and I can also talk to you about um, in terms of priority. I would and that's me. I would say you should first get your hands on this book, very important. Then follow it by the functions, method, and concepts in evaluation research by Professor Stockman and Maya. Um, but like I said, the first you need to get your hands on is Alkin and Anne. The evaluation essentials has been very useful for all evaluators. Then followed by functions, methods, and concepts in evaluation research by Professor Stockman and Wolfgang Mayer. That's another very good book. Then thirdly, you can jump on Marilyn Goggins and Jody Zalkusek's book, Making Monitoring and Evaluation Systems Work. Then lastly, think about the Handbook of Practical Program Evaluation. So this has um, a whole lot of evaluation cases and stories and how they were carried out. So this will be very important for you. So I hope this 5 weeks has been very useful for you. We still have 1 unit left, which is, yes, you being starting out as a consultant, or everything you need to know about the profession itself. We will be discussing in unit 3. But I hope this unit has been so useful for you. If you have comments, suggestions, please put it in the classroom comment box. And if you're watching this video and you want to be part of the class, um, just get on this website and you will be able to register there. Or if you're looking at a group booking, maybe for your staff or so, you want this training for your NGO staff, then you need to move on to training@cloneshouse.com. You can also put a phone call through to this number that just a call away. I hope this session has been so useful, super useful for you. Um, so with that, I wish you the best of the days, and yes, happy evaluating.